Hey, what's up, y'all? It's Will with Schedulefly, and I decided to start doing a brief introduction to these podcasts to let you know who's involved and what we talked about, so you know what you're getting into. So this one is with Jay and Jeremy Bond. These guys are phenomenal dudes. They're brothers. They're two of the four partners at Bond Brothers Beer Company in Cary, North Carolina. And in 2017, USA Today named Bond Brothers Beer Company the best new brewery in the nation for the year 2016. So these guys are doing something right. They actually opened 3 years to the day prior to the day we did our interview. And when they opened, they weren't sure if many people would show up, and they were nervous about it. They had 6,000 people come on opening day. And after 6 months, they had to throw out their 5-year plan because they were growing exponentially faster than they had anticipated. And this is with four partners that had very little hospitality experience. So they came with a very fresh approach. They grew the business organically. They've had, I believe, no turnover in 3 years in the business. So we talked about, what led to the success. We talked about why they don't micromanage, collaboration within the beer community, the 3 pillars of their business, which is very interesting. We talked about quality becoming more important these days in craft brewing and why. The trend of craft breweries being acquired by large multinationals and the impact that's having on the industry, and a lot more. So highly recommend checking this interview out. Jay and Jeremy are phenomenal dudes. They are very nice. They're genuine. They're soft-spoken. They're humble. And we just had a really interesting conversation. Lots of good nuggets in here. So y'all enjoy. What's up, everybody? It's Will with Schedulefly, and I'm in Cary, North Carolina today with Jay and Jeremy Bond of Bond Brothers Beer Company. And by coincidence, not planned, but a fortunate coincidence, we are actually sitting here on the 3-year anniversary of their opening. So they were kind enough to take some time today. So guys, Jay, Jeremy, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, let's get started with your story. Tell me the backstory about Bond Brothers.
Well, really, Bond Brothers started with Jeremy and Whit Baker. They are friends, have been friends for over 10 years, I'd say.
Yeah. I think he was one of the first people I met, actually, when I moved to North Carolina. We hung out together, did a lot of things together, started brewing together. He's a science teacher, so his mind is very he's a very science-minded individual. Jeremy is a very kind of practical, hands-on. So it kind of he got a homebrew kit one day from a friend, and they're like hanging out. Well, let's try. Let's see what happens. Let's brew some beer. So they brewed a beer with the homebrew kit. Whit, obviously, because he likes science, got into it. So Jeremy started developing the system, building his own homebrew system, and it started out as a gravity-fed system with reclaimed wood, kind of like a hodgepodge of pots and pumps and things, and eventually it evolved into a almost fully automated system. I mean, we could have gone above and beyond what we did, but we sort of drew the line.
What were you doing then? I mean, because all these stories about, there's so many of these breweries where it's, a couple of guys in a homebrew kit or one dude in a homebrew kit, and then next thing you know, years later, there's this incredible brewery.
Yeah, I get that question asked a lot, and so I went to art school and I did freelance illustration for years, basically editorial things you see in magazines and books and stuff, and I enjoyed that, but I just didn't like the grind. Paychecks were kind of few and far between, and so I ended up getting into fabrication. I had studied with a sculptor in New York for years. While I was in high school, I studied there, and then a couple of years before I went to college, I apprenticed with him Would go to the city every day, and I learned a lot of, learned how to weld. I learned a lot about sculpting, and I've always liked to just build and do things with my hands. So I got into fabrication, and that's what kind of led us down the path of building a brewery. Almost all the setup, the glycol system, the boiler, the steam lines, my brother and I installed all of that. Basically to save money and just because that's what we like to do. So yeah, it was just, I like the fabrication aspect. I like the creative aspect of beer. Whit liked science. I mean, he's still really creative when it comes to recipe formulation, but he's also very science oriented. So it was a good relationship, and we had pretty strong work ethics. I think at one point we ended up having 7 refrigerators in my shed, all temperature controlled. And when we actually came here to present our product or our beer to the developers, I think we had 11 different home brews that we shared with them, which is that's not normal.
Right. I wouldn't think so.
For a home brewer. But we just, we both had full-time jobs, worked really hard, and then during the week and on the weekends we brewed. And, Jay would be at the house also brewing, and sometimes you'd have some sort of issue and you'd be brewing till 3 a.m. and you had to be at work at 7. So that was our lifestyle for a while, and as a result, that kind of pushed us into the professional side, because it just became, I don't want to use the term overwhelming because it was something we enjoyed doing, but we had to find the balance because it was getting to be a little difficult. So.
Sure. Yeah, that's tough to balance for a long time. I mean, hard to sustain that. Yeah,
we had to make a decision either way.
Yeah.
Either we're going to go full bore or we're going to dial it back, and here we are.
Okay.
3 years later.
Yeah. And at the time too, I was living in the Yadkin Valley working at a vineyard.
Okay.
So I had gotten into winemaking out there. I was originally into horticulture, and that brought me into viticulture, which in turn got me into wanting to learn how to make wine and ferment. So when they were doing their thing here, I would travel back and forth and, hang out with them and brew with them. And actually the majority, I'd say probably 90% of the barrels we have in the back come from where I used to work. So it was an interesting grouping. I brought in some of my knowledge with barreling and winemaking, and kind of worked off of them.
Okay, gotcha. I mean, so tell me about getting started. I mean, it's you started 3 years ago. There's a lot that had to go into this. Did y'all buy this building or?
No, we did not.
Okay, so you leased the building.
Yep.
You have a lot of investment in the equipment. Did you get investors, or did y'all self-fund this?
Yeah, no. Actually, our fourth partner, Andy Schnitzer, we met him through a run club. We used to all be, we still are for the most part, big runners. So we met him one day at the run club, and he was interested in, I think at the time was looking to do a bottle shop, but knew we were also interested in opening a brewery. And we were kind of working with another investor, but it just wasn't the right fit for us. And Andy came in and had a lot of the same philosophies we did, and knew about us, knew the beer and knew the reputation we had already established, and really was just ready to get something going. So we went out, and his broker he was working with knew of this space. We were all in, I think we were all in, Jeremy and I were in Raleigh at the time, living in Raleigh at the time, and Whit was still in Chapel Hill. So we didn't really think about Cary at the time, but we did know when we got here that there was a huge revitalization happening. I mean, it was kind of a mess. They had Academy Street ripped up. There wasn't many businesses. There wasn't many restaurants to come to. And the ones that were here were kind of inaccessible because of all the construction going on.
Yeah.
But we knew within probably a year's time that was going to be done. So we walked into this building, and immediately This was after, we've toured other buildings and knew like, oh man, that won't work. That won't work. That won't work. We walked in this one and we're like, this is absolutely perfect. So we tried to play cool, pretend like, it wasn't that cool, but it was awesome. We knew it was going to be perfect. So we had that big meeting with the town. Actually, some of the townspeople came out. The building owner came out, and that was when we just happened to have 11 beers ready and kegged. So I actually didn't make that meeting. I wasn't there, but Jeremy Witt and Andy, I think, were there, right? So we had a menu. We created a menu. We brought snacks, and then we had beer, and we all sat down. They all sat down and sampled the beer and talked to us, and to see what, if we were serious and if we knew what we were talking about. And they were looking at some other options, but I think after that meeting, we pretty much convinced them that they should go with us. And
were there any other breweries here at the time?
There was Fortnite.
Okay.
Fortnite was the only existing. It's not downtown. It's just outside, maybe 2 miles away from here.
Okay. So nothing here in downtown. Tell us about, people listening, from all over the place. Cary is a bedroom community outside of Raleigh, although Cary's grown quite a bit.
There's over 160,000 people.
Okay.
I think.
Is that big now? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe even more now. It's huge. It's growing exponentially. What was your question?
I was just kind of wanting to get a general description of the town of Cary. And
the town it's been voted many times by many different publications as one of the safest places to live in America.
Yeah.
I think it's per capita. I don't know how they do it, but
well, when you advertise it, when it's advertised that way, that certainly helps drive a lot of growth. A lot of people want, so I'm sure there's a lot of people moving here for that reason.
Yeah, and they call it a town, and I think they're going to try to keep that as long as they can.
Yeah.
It's in my mind, it's becoming a city.
It's becoming a city,
but it still has that town feel to me. It's a very family-oriented town. A lot of things to walk to now with the new park. It's just a cool vibe. It's like, Raleigh's cool too, but it's just a completely different feel.
Sure.
You go down there, you almost feel like you're in a mini New York city.
Right. Yeah. This is a small town. There's a little Main Street area.
Yeah.
It's a small. Yeah.
I had a friend come out and visit, and they said it looks like a movie set. Walking down Academy Street, said it's just so pretty. It just looks like.
That's a good way to describe it.
It looks fake.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's just a good, comfortable. I've got 2 kids, so I just love raising them here.
Yeah.
It's just a nice place.
So, okay, so you got open 3 years ago. What were some of the biggest hurdles y'all had to face early on that maybe you hadn't anticipated? Were there times where you were like, holy cow, what have we gotten into? Or did it just kind of start taking off pretty quickly and you knew that?
Yeah, I'd say the biggest emotional, I don't know how to describe it, was, when we opened up. So we did a soft opening, and then we did a grand opening. And our grand opening, we're like, oh man, I hope people come.
Yeah.
Hope people show up. What if we did all this work, put all this time and made all these sacrifices, and nobody shows up? And then about 6,000 people showed up on opening day. We had Chatham County Line come out and play, a couple other bands as well, a bunch of vendors. It was just such a cool experience. But at that moment, in my mind, I was slightly overwhelmed, just like, holy cow. It was
always a huge risk to open up in Cary, because I would tell people where we were and describe the location and explain to them we were downtown Cary, and no one knew.
Where's downtown?
Yeah, it was always the question was always asked, "Where's downtown?"
Right, because it is. You have a small downtown area, Main Street, where there's 160,000 people spread around here. Most of them are living out in suburbs and neighborhoods, and they're shopping in new shopping centers that are nearby.
And we have great relationships with the people in the area, the business owners, restaurant owners, and they talked about the fact that it was pretty much deserted after dark. There was you never saw anybody walking around, and now. It'll be 2:00 in the morning, and there's people out.
There's stuff going on.
Yeah, just enjoying themselves.
Let me ask you all. It's one thing you've you've come up with all these recipes for all these different beers, and you've invested in this place, and you've built this out, and you're getting ready to open. But did y'all have experience in hospitality?
Life experience, maybe.
You were working at a venue, but
I also did a lot of tastings. So I worked in the tasting room, and that was the extent of my experiences doing wine tastings and things like that. I never was in the service industry or anything like that. Jeremy was, and I think Whit wasn't either. No, I think too that gave us a different perspective. Like when we hired bartenders, we hired people not necessarily from the service industry. We hired people that when we had a conversation with them during an interview, they were engaging.
Yeah.
They had a good personality.
Sure.
Because you can teach anybody how to serve beer.
Yeah.
And you can learn about beer, but you can't really teach somebody how to be a good, genuine, nice person.
Absolutely.
Sometimes. So we approach it from that angle, and I think had we had the service industry experience, we would have approached it differently.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
No, I was just going to bring up our philosophy is basically just to do everything organically. Like we try not to force anything.
Yeah.
That's all I was going to mention.
Well, it raises a good point. You didn't have some of those preconceived notions,
right?
But it's such a big part of what you do. There's the product, and then there's the execution on providing this meaningful experience when somebody comes in here that's matches the promise of the brand, if you will, and
exactly.
So that's congrats on figuring that out, because that you may not even maybe you just felt like that wasn't something you were as concerned. You figured you could do it, but it's not easy to pull off. When you have people, there's a lot of things that can go awry. You can have a great product,
human beings, and they have bad days and good days. But we also went into it with the philosophy: we're selling beer, yes, but we're also selling an experience. You come to Bond Brothers to feel good, to get away. You don't want to, that's why people come here.
Yeah.
Or maybe to forget. I don't know.
Right. Well, the product helps a lot with that, but and maybe they don't recognize the experience at some point. But no, that's a big part of this. It's getting harder and harder with hospitality to find and keep good people to, live up to that promise. And
we've had, this is our third year, and I don't think we've had zero turnover. We still have employees from the very beginning.
That's amazing.
Yeah, bartenders. They're in grad school, or I think one of them just didn't. Steve just who got his? Yeah, and another one's in her getting her doctorate. People like it. They stay.
Yeah.
So,
what is your? Tell me about that. What are you doing that's keeping them engaged and happy and fulfilled and wanting to be a part of this versus? There's tons of. We're here in Cary, Raleigh, there's just all kinds of opportunities with all kinds of great hospitality businesses.
Well, I think the money definitely doesn't hurt.
Money doesn't hurt.
They make very good money tip-wise, but I also think we don't micromanage at all.
Okay.
We hire people because we trust that they can do the job and they can do it well, and a lot of times better than us. That's why we hire them. So we let them, give us ideas, tell us when we're wrong. We don't try to be right all the time. So, we respect them as educated adults and allow them to be themselves. So I think sometimes when you rule with an iron fist, you can get stuff done, but it's just not done in the way that we operate. We're very, as you can tell, we're soft-spoken and both artists. So we come from that sort of that mindset. And I think that helps.
I think it does. You have to find. You're good, though. I can tell you've got to find the right people that will have that accountability and have that sense of being a self-starter and owning something and being willing to work with autonomy. Some people need need a process and need.
Yeah.
So you're doing a great job of finding people that, and that's a good thing. I mean, look, those are the things that it seems to make people really engaged and happy at work, is autonomy and mastery of what they're doing and some sense of purpose. And it sounds like you found a way to provide those opportunities for your team.
Yeah, I think we have, and we've been lucky. I mean, it's not all us. We've been lucky that these people have walked through our door. So it's just been good. Knock on wood.
So where are we today? We're 3 years in. Tell me, is this where you thought you'd be 3 years in? And
no, we had a basic 5-year plan.
Okay.
That went out the window probably within 6 months of opening up.
Because you were growing a lot faster than you.
Yeah, when we originally started, we had the main tap room and the patio, and early on, maybe a few months in, we realized, we're going to need more space. So we acquired this extra, I think it's 1,200 or 2,000 square feet about 1,200 square feet, sorry. We're sitting in right now, which is, we call it our event space, but it has quickly become our overflow additional space. I mean, on the weekends, this whole room will be filled, the patio will be filled, and the tap room will be filled. Huh? Oh, yeah. And when we started, we have a 10-barrel system. And when we started, we had 2 10-barrel fermenters, a 10 bright, and then 2 20s and a 20 bright. And now we're maxed out. And so we have the brewery side is completely full. We are almost maxed out with barrels in our back room as well. So we have since required a second location down the streat. So we haven't really announced it yet because we're still working on it.
Okay.
But that will...
You kind of just did.
I know. I just did. So what we're planning... I mean, our plan is to get it open by the summer, sometime this summer. But it will be home to our clean barrel program, because right now all of our barrels in our facility house what we call dirty beers or sour beers, things that have wild yeast and bacteria in them. So we wanted a separate location so we won't contaminate the clean side. So that's actually almost up and running. Then we want to up production, so we've built a cooler over at our other location, which is about another 1,200 square feet of space to store beer. And then we've got offices, because when we first started, we had one office, and we're like, well, what do we need offices for? We're going to be brewing all the time. Like, we don't need an office. And then quickly, there's like 5 of us working out of this tiny little closet of an office, and it just was getting ridiculous. Jeremy had a desk in the barrel room that kept getting moved every day because we're a production facility and people needed the space. So now we have a separate location where we can have meetings and work quietly, and then a 1,500 square foot tap room. So that's what we're working on to open up this summer, and hopefully it'll be a different approach than this one. The idea is to have a few guest taps there, which we don't have guest taps here. All of our stuff we make in-house, but we might invite some friends over to have a tap and sell some of their beer, and try to make it maybe a little bit more adult friendly. We love kids, and we have families here, and I bring my kids to the brewery all the time. But some people want to get away and don't want kids running around.
Sure.
So in my mind, it would be great if we can turn that space into that, where people can come after work and get away for a little while. So that's the goal, hopefully by July, maybe June.
Okay, so it's pretty soon.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to take a lot of work, but we're close. Sort of.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. There's so much collaboration in the beer community. I think that's really cool to see. Have you guys? Has that been part of what you're?
Yeah. Whit. You want to say? Yeah. Whit. So Whit Baker.
That's a big part. That's a big part of Whit's brewing process and recipe formulation, I guess. He loves talking shop, loves talking about beer. I mean, he can do it every day, all day, forever. So yeah, he really enjoys collaboration. He really enjoys community. Just spending the day with a fellow brewer and learning. That's, I think, probably what he's most passionate about is education. And as a result, he makes some really good beers. So I think collaboration is a huge part of what we're about.
I mean, it's interesting because, I mean, you're all competing for the same customers, but I see that everywhere. Particularly, I mean, I see it all the time in this area. There's a lot of breweries around here. You see it up in Nashville. You see it in Charlotte. I mean, it's just it's cool to see that you all kind of have a rising tide lifts all boats sort of mentality for the most part.
That seems to be the philosophy of everyone that opens a brewery. It's because you want your neighbors to succeed. You want the beer in this area to be top notch.
Right.
So you don't want somebody to produce bad beer.
Right.
So everybody
works together. Because you're building a reputation for the community as a great place for great beer.
Yep. And people will come to town for a weekend and hit a bunch of different breweries, and you got to give them a reason to stick around. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so then where are we going? I mean, you've got your other location. Do you still have a 5-year plan, or have you kind of said, you know what, we're no, not really.
Yeah.
Kind of went out the window. We definitely want to up production. That's distribution, excuse me.
What is your distribution now?
We have maybe a little over 200 accounts. Everything's very local. It's all North Carolina. We do have a couple outside of North Carolina accounts, but we don't travel there. They come to us, and we'll pick up beer and bring it back.
So these are local being, so North Carolina, and primarily around here. I mean, these are restaurants and bars
within
and places.
Driving distance. We have one driver and one van.
Okay.
So, but our pinch point is the cooler. So you need space to house the beer, even if it's for one day.
Yeah.
To distribute it.
Yeah.
So we're in kind of a holding pattern at the moment, sticking with what we have, just so we can make sure that we can supply the demand that we already have, because we don't want to not be able to give our customers that we have beer. So the goal, is to get that second cooler up, and then we can, up distribution and kind of reach a broader audience, and then hopefully get some more canning done. Eventually, our goal is to have a canning line. We do mobile canning at the moment, which is convenient that they can do that, but it's also
mobile canning.
A company will just come in with a box truck and bring a canning line in and a crew.
Okay.
And they're pretty much responsible for canning your beer in in the appropriate way. So you don't really have to do a whole lot.
The margins are horrible.
The margins are not very good. So we do it just mainly because we want to get our beer out there, and it's fun to can. It's fun to put something in a can. It's fun to do artwork. It's fun to collaborate. We've got a new series that we just canned yesterday. It's the second in the series, called From Around Here, and it's beer brewed with all local ingredients. I mean, every aspect, from the rosemary we get.
What is local?
North Carolina.
North Carolina. Okay.
Yeah, and we use Epiphany malt, which is locally grown. What else did we have? We had apples. I think that went into it. It's a very unique beer, and it's a saison. I think the first one was a saison as well, right? I think they're all going to be saisons. But it's a very good beer, and that's coming out very soon.
How do you? Okay, so you've got these accounts. What education do you do for them? So you've got some restaurant 50 miles from here or whatever that's got your beer. They've also got a bartender that's sitting here with 15 other beers or 20 or whatever. How do you get them excited about what you're doing and having them, hopefully position Bond Brothers as a great option for their customers? Or do you? I mean, what?
Well, we do to some extent. So we have a pretty good way to describe the beer. We use like 3 keywords, so we keep it pretty simple. So if it's like, dry, citrusy, bready, those are like very descriptive words that the server, bartender, waiter, waitress.
Did you go to that?
Yeah, so I did. There was a guy. He has a food truck that we love. He comes here all the time, and he opened a brick and mortar and loves our beer, so wanted the beer. So we brought him some beer, and he was training his staff, and we basically they ask the right questions. Like they want to know what the style is. They want to know what hops are in it. Some way to differentiate it from all the other taps that are that they're serving, and they sample it. That's also really important. You can get a lot from just smelling and tasting the beer, especially if there's someone that's very familiar with the product there, to kind of give them those key words to describe it, because they know what they smell, they know what they taste, they just don't know what words to use.
Mm-hmm.
So language in beer is pretty important. So that's, for us, education is big. Community is really big for us, and quality is really big for us. Those are like the three pillars of the company. So any chance we can get to educate, we take advantage of it. And we just like to help people out. And so now we have a really great relationship with the restaurant. He's like, anytime you want anything, just come by. It's on me. And hopefully we have a customer for life. So we try to go out of our way just to help them, and then in turn it helps us. And it's, I think that's pretty much it.
Is there so there are a lot of breweries. There are a lot of breweries that are opening around here. There's breweries open all over the place. I always think about saturation. Like where is there a point where there's so many craft breweries and not enough customers to go around? I guess we're probably not even remotely close to that.
No, I don't think we're
point.
remotely close. But what we are seeing, though, too, is we are getting more and more. We're seeing that quality is since there's more now, people have a metric in which they can judge a beer, because they say, I went to this place, it's really good. This place was not as good as that place. So now what we're seeing is a more educated customer in the craft beer industry. And they'll be very quick to tell you how they feel about your beer, which is good and bad. Because a lot of people go on, they say nice things. Occasionally they might not say nice things, but, it's all good publicity. So I think that's what we're seeing. We're not seeing a saturation in the market. We're just seeing a more educated consumer. And that in turn is, I think, affecting some of the mediocre breweries. You'll see that, like some places might be closing their doors. But I don't think that's a bad thing. I think, like Jeremy said, the more educated the people are, the better the product's going to be.
Sure. Yeah.
So, and like we said earlier, I think the more the merrier.
Yeah.
People, there's plenty of room for other breweries. People like to bounce around, go to different places. We do collaborations, so it's just good to have that network and that family.
Seems like people more and more care about the businesses they patronize, and so you have people that will, especially around here, in Raleigh, there's all these great independent restaurants. People want to go to an independent restaurant, not a chain. I'm going to guess there's a lot of that in the beer world as well, where you feel like you're part of something a little bit more meaningful than just some massive corporation that spits out hundreds of millions of cans of beer every month. And I ask that because I also see you're starting to see a lot of these, several, I guess there's just a few of them now, large corporations that are then going and buying a lot of these breweries. And to me, I just wonder if that, I'm sure the economics work well for them, but I wonder over the long term if customers then are less engaged and bought into that brand because it's now part of something else versus something that's independent. That's
absolutely the case. Yeah. A prime example is Wicked Weed, when they sold.
That was
So they went from just people were passionate about the brewery, their philosophies, and they sold out. And overnight, people changed.
Yeah.
And they stopped going, which is understandable. One of the things that appealed to us about Carey and the revitalization was the fact that they were focusing on small businesses, independent restaurants. They were no franchise. None were going to open up in downtown. And there was a Little Caesars, gone. Now there's like a Pizzeria Felici, which is awesome Neapolitan pizza. Big Dom's. But yeah, that appeals to us.
And the independent craft beer label, the seal.
Yeah.
Too, right?
What? I don't know if you're going to elaborate on the
No, I was just saying
independent craft. What is the
differentiates?
Yeah, so there's
So you were talking about AB InBev, we'll say, buying up smaller breweries and keeping the name and still running the brewery under the guise of craft. So the BA came out with a independent, I guess it's called the Independent Craft Beer Seal. So on all of your, if you are a true craft brewery, you can put this seal on your can or bottle, your packaging, however you want to do it, and it lets the consumer know that you are in fact not owned by AB InBev. So that's a cool thing that they did, and I think a lot of people are doing that. We have it on all of our stuff, all of our cans, even our menus. We have it on, just so people know. And
what changes when they buy? I mean, in that case, like what they run it. You say under the guise of. I mean, what do they?
I don't think the quality or the product doesn't necessarily change, but I think what happens is they can produce a product they can sell it for less money.
Okay.
So
gotcha.
they can, because they have
economies of scale.
Yes. So what that does is it kind of hurts people like us who we can't afford to sell our beer for, for lack of a better term, Walmart prices. So, so you have to make money. So I think their goal, and I'm just speaking here, their goal is to eventually try to drive down the prices, which will in turn force some of these smaller craft breweries out of business. There's a lot of really good articles on the topic, but who knows what their end motive is, but I think all of us agree that that's probably one of them.
But is there always? I mean, so that's playing to the lowest common denominator. But I mean, they're then not able to. So they're selling cheap beer, but they're not going to attract people to work there and the type of customers that
depends on how they do it. I mean,
yeah.
Sometimes you don't even know they purchased. Sometimes you won't.
Well,
even know.
That's a good point. The customer is not aware.
Yeah.
Well, that word spreads, but
it does, especially if they're a big name. But
they're not going to be creative and continue to. The experience that you guys can provide with the things you can do. It's the beer, but it's also the events. It's the passion and the thought and the creativity and all the stuff that, because it's so meaningful to you, that you're able to provide a different type of experience, I'm going to guess, than they probably will. They may can at first, but over time that's just going to become sort of a, maybe not quite as an engaging and a little bit more stale and replicatable experience,
absolutely,
I would think.
Yeah, they have to answer to shareholders now. So
right.
That's their main priority.
Yeah.
So beer is no longer, and I think that's what kind of irks a lot of people in the industry, in the craft beer industry, is that they go from, being passionate and creative and just to a corporation that makes decisions now solely based on profit.
Yeah.
No longer the beer.
Yeah. And you guys might have somebody knock on your door one day, but I mean, if you're building a business that you enjoy and you're making money at it and your quality of life's good and you're able to continue to make your own decisions and thrive, what's the
why sell?
What's the point?
Right.
Then what?
Yeah, exactly. Why? Yeah. We wanted to create a place we always said we just want to create a place that we want to go and hang out in.
Yeah.
So, and we've done that.
Unless that changes, like why?
Yeah. So what? I mean, you're making good money. You're living well. You know, kids are happy. Family's happy. Why?
Yeah.
You know, but you know, sometimes they present an offer maybe you couldn't refuse. I don't know. But
yeah.
I certainly wouldn't sell.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've always been interested in that. I mean, it's such an interesting dynamic in this industry, and I'm just fascinated with it. It's funny. I was thinking of that exact situation, which I didn't want to say, and then when you mentioned that, but I mean that. But you're seeing that around the country. More and more. Well, guys, I've taken enough of your time. I think y'all are awesome.
Thanks, man.
You're awesome to spend this time. You have just a really enjoyable story and a way of approaching your business. I have a lot of respect for y'all and I admire what you've done and the way you've gone about it and your philosophy and your style of managing your people. And we're super proud to serve you, and I just cannot thank you enough for taking the time today.
Thanks, Will.
Thank
you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Our pleasure.
All right. Well, that's a wrap. Thank you all.